Okay. The last thing I ever thought I was going to be was a televangelist. Number two, this is not my venue. I'm not bad at small groups, but to stand up here and drone, which I might be doing a little bit. Yeah, drone on. And I haven't had time to, I started a lesson and I was just going to go ahead and follow it. But I got into it and it started taking an entirely different direction. So I haven't had time to smooth this out. So it's going to be a little bit choppy. So let me apologize right from the get-go. Yeah. All right. I've labeled this the perils of Paul. Kind of like the perils of Pauline. Yeah. Anyway. Somebody describe who Paul was to me. Who was Paul? He was a Roman citizen. Pardon me? Okay. He's an apostle. Was there anything special in the Jewish community? He was well thought of. He was well thought of. Okay. Did he hold any particular office or a position? Yeah, he was a Pharisee. Yeah, Paul was a Pharisee. He, like as was mentioned, he was a persecutor of the early church. He's pretty good at it. Okay, Paul's background. Do we know his background? Where's he from? He's from Tarsus. Okay. Who did he study under? Gamaliel. Does anybody know anything about Gamaliel? Okay. He was a member of the Sanhedrin. Anybody know the special title that he was given? It was called Rabban. Okay, that means Rabban, R-A-B-A-N. It basically means our teacher. It's an honorific. That was Gamaliel. All right. Anybody know what particular school he was in? There were two, the Hillel, and then there was I am going to butcher this. Shammai? Shammai? Anybody know which one? Anybody anything about it? Yeah. No. That means it had to be the other one, right? Okay. Gamaliel was of the house of Hillel. Okay. The Torah, their beliefs was the Torah was divinely given and it is binding.
I have questions off the bat because you have the answers on.
This is an outline. It gives you just about everything I have on my notes. They believed the Torah was divinely given and binding. He didn't question. Hillel was the elder who founded this school of Judaism. Again, didn't question authority of the law. Written and oral tradition were essential to Jewish life. So the Torah and the Talmud. The Talmud was the oral history of the Jews. Said the law should be interpreted very carefully, favored thoughtful interpretation. Though thought that the law was a guide, was to guide people into faithful living by simple, like I said, it was going to be choppy. Thought that the law was to guide people into faithful living, not simply to impose a burden. What did Jesus say about that? Anybody remember when he was talking to the Sanhedrin? You'll go all over the world to convert one person, and you make him worse than you are. And we'll talk about what he meant by that. Mercy and patience matter. Acts 5:34 and 39. Could somebody look that up real quick? And I'll even let you read it. '34 and 30 through 39. That's fine? That's it. Okay. So Gamaliel was basically, his belief was, he asks the question, what best fulfills the purpose of God's law? Now, Gamaliel was also Hillel's son, and Hillel was the, founder of this particular school of Judaism. Now, the house of Shammai was a little more strict. They were more strict on their legal rulings, emphasized rigorous observations and more literal and stringent interpretations. There's a story told that a tailor was walking home from his shop and he had a needle in his collar on the Sabbath. He received 39 lashes because he was working on the Sabbath. Okay, so I would guess that that's the house of Shammai, that one. Okay, who did Jesus follow? Which house do you think he followed? It depended on the circumstance. Sometimes he was very lenient and said, look, that's not what God intended. The Sabbath was meant for man, not man for the Sabbath. In other cases, talking about divorce, or he was a little more towards Shammai. Okay. Now, what advantages did Paul have as being a Roman citizen? What advantages did Paul have as a Roman citizen? Got him out of being flogged once. Scared the centurion. Did he have a right to proper trial? Did a non-Roman have that advantage or privilege? Romans did. Did Jews or Gentiles who weren't Roman citizens? Not really. Could a Roman citizen be crucified? Nope. This is one of the incidents, not the only. one of the incidents that set Paul on his journey toward Rome, which was long and arduous. We won't get into that. Okay, was he a persecutor of the early church? That's a rhetorical question, I guess. How old do you think he was when he started this? It's just kind of an offhand question. Pardon me? Actually, they say it was anywhere from 19 to higher 20s. He wasn't that loud. He wasn't as old as we might have thought. Anywhere from 19 up to 20. Where do we first meet him? Nope. Did he approve of it? Did he approve of the stoning of Stephen? Okay. What did he start doing after that? And where? Anybody? Yeah, but he actually started in Jerusalem. And then I don't know whether he kind of liked it or felt the power or whatever, but then he literally went to the Sanhedrin and said, "Hey, I hear the Christians have scattered. I know there's a bunch of them in Damascus. Why don't you give me some letters? I'll go get them." Interestingly enough, in Acts 1:8, what does it talk about? Where did Christianity start and where was it going? Jerusalem, Judea, Samaria, and all the earth. Where's Damascus? Yeah, Judea, up toward Judea, then Samaria. So yeah, God knew what he was talking about. So interestingly enough, his persecution in Jerusalem did what? He initiated the first diaspora. All the Christians started scattering. So Paul, not knowing it, actually spread the gospel, which is kind of cool. Okay, on the road to Damascus, what happened? Acts 9:3-9. Anybody want to look that up? As he journeyed, he came near Damascus, and suddenly there shined around about him a light from heaven. And he fell to earth and heard a voice saying unto him, Saul, Saul, why persecutest me? And he said, Who art thou, Lord? And the Lord, I'm sorry, let me start that over. Now, as he was traveling, it happened that he was approaching Damascus, and suddenly a light from heaven flashed around him. And he fell to the ground and heard a voice saying to him, Saul, Saul, why are you persecuting me? And he said, Who are you, Lord? And he said, I am Jesus, whom you are persecuting. But get up, enter the city, and it will be told to you what you must do. The men who traveled with him stood speechless, hearing the voice, but seeing no one. Saul got up from the ground, and though his eyes were open, he could see nothing. And leading him by the hand, they brought him into Damascus. And for 3 days he was without sight, and neither ate or drank. So blinding light, he hears Jesus, goes blind, has to be led by hand into Damascus, and he fasted for 3 days. Okay. From here, who does he meet? Who does God send? Ananias. Who's Ananias? Okay. So is he Jewish or a Gentile? Jewish at this point. Okay. Was he respected? Okay. He was obedient to God's command and somewhat reluctant to go see Paul. I can't imagine. There was a disciple in Damascus named Ananias, and the Lord said to him in a vision, Ananias? And he said, Here I am, Lord. And the Lord said to him, Get up and go to the street called Straight, and inquire at the house of Judas for a man from Tarsus called Saul, for he's praying. And he has seen a vision of a man named Ananias come in and And the Lord said to him, Get up and go to the street called Straight, and inquire at the house of Judas for a man from Tarsus named Saul, for he is praying. And he has seen a vision of a man named Ananias come in and lay hands on him so that he might regain his sight. But Ananias answered, Lord, I've heard from many people about this man, how much harm he did to your saints in Jerusalem. And here he has authority from the chief priest to arrest all who call on your name. But the Lord said to him, Go, for he is a chosen instrument of mine to bear my name before the Gentiles and kings and the sons of Israel. For I will show him how much he must suffer for my name. I'm not sure I'd go. But he did. So, Paul meets Ananias. Is the straight street still there in Damascus? You can't actually walk it today. It is straight. It goes almost all the way to the coast. Okay, what does Ananias do for him? Okay. Okay. I'm sorry? Mm-hmm. Yep. Okay, so he helped Saul with his conversion with baptism. He was a positive example of obedience. Like I said, that one's a tough one. Saul got back his sight. He was baptized. He ate. Was strengthened by those in Damascus. Damascus has a population of about 100 to 200,000 people. That's a big town. Everybody knows what the Silk Road is. Coming out of China and India, going to Constantinople. What I did not realize is there were branches off of the Silk Road. And one of them has a terminus right at Damascus. And from there it was put on ships and sent off to Athens. So it was quite a melting pot of a lot of different nationalities and religions. Would that be a pretty good launching spot for Christianity? Pretty much. He did preach in Damascus, but there was a plot to kill him. How did he escape that? They threw him in a basket. They threw him in a basket and lowered him down through the walls because they were paying very close attention to the gate. Brent, did he immediately go to Jerusalem? Where did he go? What's that? Yeah, in Galatians 1:17 and 18. I spent 3 years in Arabia and Damascus, or he spent 3 years in Arabia and Damascus and then went to Jerusalem to see the other apostles. Who introduced him to the other apostles? We've been studying Acts, haven't we? We've been studying for the past, 8 months? We've been going through Acts. When did we first see him? 436. Come on. Thus Joseph, who was also called by the apostles Barnabas, which means son of encouragement, a Levite, a native of Cyprus. He basically had sold the field and brought the money to the apostles. And Acts 11. Uh, where was uh, where was Barnabas sent in 11? I've messed up the verses, but he was sent to Antioch. And they were first Christ followers were first called Christians there. Barnabas and Saul got together, and what was one of their first missions together? Anybody know? They were in Antioch, and what did they take to Jerusalem? What did the church in Antioch do? Okay, they raised money for Jerusalem. Why? There was a famine there. And you're on it, Dave. You're on it. What's that? I believe it was a prophecy, yes. Where was Barnabas and Paul had their first missionary journey. It was Acts 13 through 14. One of the first places they went was Cyprus. They went from the north all the way to the south. Then they went to Antioch. But it was Pisidian Antioch, which is up farther up. You have an Antioch down here, and then you have Antioch up here. Iconium, and then Lystra. What happened to Paul in Lystra? He was stoned and left for dead. Yeah, what's impressive is he got back up, went back into the city. But then he went to Derbe, preached there, and then he came back through Lystra again. Now that's bold. Did he play any role in whether Gentiles should be required to follow Moses, the Jewish law? Yeah, that was poorly worded. Paul and Barnabas went to Jerusalem to talk to the church in Jerusalem whether Gentiles should be circumcised and follow the whole of Moses' Mosaical law. What happened to Paul and Barnabas after the first missionary journey? Pardon me? Yeah, they split. The split was because of John Mark. Sometime during the first missionary journey, John Mark said, bye. So Paul didn't trust him at that point. So Paul took Silas, and Barnabas took John Mark, and they split up. Barnabas' cousin, yes. And we're going through this in a hurry, I apologize. Okay, where did Paul go next? Anybody remember? Well, maybe not next. He went to Athens. Okay, what's special about Athens? Center of Greek society. You've all heard of the Parthenon, right? 228 feet long and 101 feet wide. Had 46 columns that were 34 feet high and 6.3 feet in diameter. And the peak was about 65 feet high. And that sits atop the Acropolis on Mars Hill. Anybody heard of that? Is that where Paul gave his lesson on the unknown God? Sort of, kind of. There's another small, you have the Parthenon, which is on the Acropolis at its highest point. Mars Hill, called the Areopagus, sits about northwest of the Acropolis. Served as the site for the Athenian Council. This is where Paul taught his first sermon on the unknown God. Is that important, starting with the unknown God? What does that mean, really? Well, philosophically, it means he starts where they are. Rather than trying, okay, well, in Leviticus it says this, and then Deuteronomy this. He said, okay, these guys are Gentiles. This is not where we start. Yeah. There was a Roman satirist called Aristophanes. He, in one of his letters, he said, you can find more gods in Athens than you can find men. Part of there were a lot of statues. There were some that believed that the gods lived actually in the statues or the idols. Some believed that it was just a representation, but they would go and they would offer sacrifices to it. They would clean them up. And if you read the sermon, he talks about that. Anybody know what an Areopagus is? No. What? Okay, an Areopagite was basically one of, well, let me kind of go over this now. Okay. They must be a citizen of Athens. They have had to hold public office or served in the military, have a reputation for wisdom and moral integrity, at least 30 years old, a good understanding of Athenian law and governance, and participation is often influenced by wealth and social status. They were basically the Supreme Court of Athens. They ruled on law, they ruled on who could teach what in Athens. Anybody know what they called Paul when he was preaching? When he was preaching, he gave his sermon, and some versions just call him a babbler. There's several different ways, Bibles are put together. Some are try word for word. Some are basic ideas. In the NASB, he is literally called, well, they come close. But a lot of the folks in the Areopagus called him a seed picker. Okay. Seed, S-E-E-D, picker. Literal translation is the bird in the marketplace picking its seeds that have fallen on the ground. That's basically what they're saying. Okay. Metaphorically, relates to a person who collects scraps of knowledge without understanding. A person whose unsophisticated communication spouts bits of information without context or understanding. Such a person is dismissed as a seed picker. Basically, they take little bits of information here, and spout it, and they sound really smart until you start asking them secondary questions. Did Paul convert anybody there? He actually converted one of the Supreme Court judges, a guy named Dionysius, to Christianity, as well as a woman named Damaris and others. We're moving through this fairly quickly. We're going to be done early, folks. Okay. Excuse me. Now what I've done is, I haven't followed the entire first, second, and third missionary journeys. I picked out some of the more, some highlights. Okay, the Temple of Artemis in Ephesus. How big was it? Anybody know? It's about 1.5 times the size of the Pantheon. Okay. The total platform was 420 feet long and 220 feet wide. The base floor was 377 feet long and 180 feet wide. So it was over a football length wide and half a football length, or feet long, and half a football length wide. The columns were 60 feet tall. 36 of these had life-size relief carvings, and its peak was estimated to be about 100 feet tall. Interestingly enough, some guy, I can't remember his name, decided he wanted his name to be remembered through eternity, and he burned down the temple. Now, how do you burn down marble? Being a fireman, I know. Okay. The roof was not made of marble. It was made of olive wood and cedar. And there was curtains everywhere, and the guy actually brought oil in, and he set the curtains on fire, which set the rafters on fire, which collapsed into the church, and the fire was hot enough that it literally turned the marble into chalk. So they had to be torn down and rebuilt. Then a little bit, about the middle of the 4th century, the Goths come in and tore it down completely. I have, if you want, I have some pictures up here of what the Parthenon looked like and what it looks like today, and the same thing with the Temple of Artemis. Paul was in Ephesus around 3 years. And some were hardened of the heart. He left the believers and he left and the believers followed. He went to the Hall of Tyrannus. It was a rented secular school. It was neutral ground. So he preached there for about 3 years. How big do you think Ephesus was? It's one of the largest cities in the Roman Empire, 200 to 250,000 people. Can you imagine trying to get water to 250,000 people and getting rid of what you have to get rid of? It was also a major trade and cultural center. How strong were Paul's healing powers when he was there? Even handkerchiefs and aprons could cure and cast out demons. Anybody remember who the sons of Sceva are? Trying to cast out demons. What's that? Yeah. Okay, was the occult prominent in Ephesus? Okay, there were rituals and offerings to goddesses. Okay, Artemis, probably the top. Exorcism were common practice. Magic and sorcery were prevalent. Many were seeking power through spells and charms. Amulets and talismans were used widely to provide protection and healing. This incident highlights the dangers of using sacred names without true faith or authority. I can just see this demon that the sons of Sceva were trying to get rid of. Well, if you read the book, if you read in ESV especially, there's two different words for knowing. Okay? One is, I know you intimately, or two, you're an acquaintance, or at least I know about you. When they were trying to cast out okay, it's unclear if Sceva was actually a priest. If he was, he didn't train his sons very well, because they were practicing the occult, basically. Not sure how successful they were prior to this. Really doesn't say, because this is the first time we meet them. The number 7 may be significant, but I didn't find anything that confirmed or denied that. And the different words used in Luke for knowing. One, like I say, was knowing intimately, and the other one was just acquainted with or know about. I think it's interesting. It says, Jesus I know, Paul I'm acquainted with, but who are you? I can just see this demon, demons probably get a day off every now and then. He was probably talking to Legion. Legion was talking about, hey, man, I got this guy. Okay, he runs around naked. They can't even chain him. People are afraid to go there. And this guy named Jesus comes along and ruins all of it. He lets me go into the pigs, but pigs couldn't handle it, so they... Yeah. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. And Legion was probably saying, I'm still wandering around looking for some place to go. And they talk. The other guy was talking about, hey, you know what? The disciples, Barnabas, John, Paul, or Peter, were trying to cast me out. Then Jesus comes along, and he just says a prayer, and I'm gone. I'm still running around looking for somebody to possess. So this demon knew who Jesus was, and he knew who Paul was. But then he, beat the snot out of them, and they run off naked. Okay, what effect did that have in Ephesus? Millions of dollars were thrown away. What was destroyed? Mm-hmm. It was interesting, they destroyed all the... Why do you think they destroyed the books rather than just kind of sell them or do whatever? I mean, millions of dollars in books. Or if they sold them, maybe somebody else would try and practice it. Okay. But I think it's interesting, through failure came revival. Them not being able to cast out the demon. What about the riot? Who started the riots? and why? Anybody remember who it was? Or what he was? Demetrius. He was a silversmith. And he made his money by making silver shrines. I find it was interesting. He got all the other artisans together and said, okay, now did you notice his first concern was not worship of Artemis, but money? They dragged in Paul's traveling companions to the theater. Did Paul want to go in and kind of settle things down? Yep. Did anybody let him go? Did he make it inside? Everybody say no. Oh, come on. No. Anybody know what an Asiarchus is? I'm butchering that too. Asiarchs even sent word for Paul not to go into the theater. It basically was a prominent official in the Roman province of Asia. Their key role was in maintaining the relationship between Roman authority and the local populations. Why were everybody there at the theater? Yeah, why were they there at the theater? I mean, it was basically they were writing. I mean, they sit there and yelled for 2 hours, "Great is Artemis of the Ephesians." Now, the thing I find interesting, if you read it, most of them didn't even know why they were there in the first place. It's basically mob mentality. Okay? Now, the city mayor did take charge. They call it clerk here, but it was basically the mayor. Said there were danger of being charged with rioting. Said if the authorities were to show up, what? They wouldn't be able to justify why they were even there. And said, go home. Okay. True story. Almost there. Few questions. How many disciples of John the Baptist did Paul encounter and baptize when he first arrived in the city? Okay, I didn't cover that, but there were 12 who had only had John's baptism, so he baptized them. In what specific public building did Paul teach for over two years? What was the school? It was Common Ground. Okay, it was a secular school, Common Ground. Anybody could teach anything there. How did God demonstrate his power through Paul regarding the sick and possessed? Talk a little bit about that. What happened with handkerchiefs and aprons when they were used to heal? Who were the sons of Sceva, and what happened? And they tried to perform an exorcism in the name of Jesus. Did not go well. What did the local magicians and sorcerers do as a result of the failed exorcism? Burned all the books. Who instigated a major public riot against Paul and his companions? Demetrius? Yeah, the silversmith. Which Greek Roman goddess temple made Ephesus a major center of idolatry? Temple of Artemis. It was considered one of the 7 wonders of the ancient world. The Temple of Artemis was considered one of the 7 wonders of the ancient world. In which coastal city did Paul give his famous farewell address to the Ephesian elders, leaving for Jerusalem? It was Miletus. Okay, like I said, it was a little choppy. Anybody have a question? Any questions? You're probably shocked that I'm not up here in my best. Any questions? Okay,